Typically, when installing doors and hardware, the doors are hung in the frame prior to any other hardware being installed. Most hardware can be installed with the door in this position. However, concealed vertical rod exit devices must be installed with the door laying horizontal, for example across a couple of sawhorses. While the door is in the opening, several factors must be verified for correct selection of the exit device and proper installation. These include the hand of the door. Refer to the installation instructions for changing hands of the device if necessary. The width and height of the door. The fire rating of the door. Make sure the door and frame are plumb and level, and that the door is not racked or warped and swings cleanly. Measure the door gap, the distance from the bottom of the door off the finished floor. This is also known as the undercut. There is a place in Step 1 of the installation instructions to put this dimension, as it is critical in properly sizing the rods. If the door and frame are not plumb and level, or are racked or warped, the concealed vertical rod exit device will not work properly. These conditions must be corrected before you continue. Locate and mark the horizontal and vertical reference center lines as per the installation instructions. It is recommended that the lines extend the full width and height of the door for future reference. The door markers should be cut out and taped to the door utilizing the horizontal and vertical reference lines. The door markers are going to do three things: locate the top strike and the bottom strike and verify the door preps. Mark the top and bottom strikes, then complete any door preps not yet in the door. The door can be removed and placed on the sawhorses. We recommend at this point that all parts are removed from its packaging and laid out on the door. This verifies all parts required for assembly are included. It is important to identify the components because Corbin Russwin has different types of concealed vertical rods. In this example, we're installing a Corbin Russwin ED5800 series. The ED5800 is used on metal doors up to 8 feet in height. We will concentrate on the ED5800 series on a 3/0 by 7/0 metal door. Now that all the parts are unpacked, verify with the installation instructions that all parts are present and accounted for. By this time, the installation instructions should have been read and made familiar in order to start the installation process. If not, now is the time to read the instructions completely. The ED5800 device is available in lengths for 36 and 48-inch doors. If other door sizes are needed, the device may be field cut. For proper sizing, see Step 3 of the installation instructions. If cutting the device is necessary, any kind of metal cutting blade will usually work, but if using a power saw, be careful that heat doesn't discolor the device. In addition, burrs may occur at the cut edge and will need to be filed off for safety. Stuffing a cloth into the hollow rail of the device will prevent shavings from interfering with the working parts. The top rod assembly is a two-piece component consisting of the top tube and the top rod. The top rod has multiple holes for different door heights up to 8 feet, so using Detail 1 of Step 4 in the instruction sheet, locate the correct door height and the proper hole location. Then slide the top rod into the top tube to the proper location. Using one of the cotter pins, connect the top tube and top rod. Make sure that you wrap the cotter pin around the top tube. If it protrudes too much, an interference inside the door may occur. The best method to avoid interference is to snip the ends off of the cotter pin. If the holes are not perfectly aligned, run a 1/8 inch drill bit through the holes. Connect the top and bottom rods to the arm and bracket assemblies using 2 cotter pins each. Bend the cotter pins so they are bent in the direction of the offset. Again, the best method is to snip off the ends as we did in the top assembly. The rod setup gauge is seldom used properly, but is important for an accurate installation. Align the rod setup gauge with the vertical and horizontal reference lines. There are 2 alignment holes on the gauge that need to be lined up with the holes in the arm and bracket assemblies where the yoke pins will be installed at a later time. The rod setup gauge has markings for top and bottom. To ensure proper installation, make sure it is pointed in the right direction. Thread the top latch into the top rod assembly, leaving approximately 4 free threads showing. Having 4 free threads showing will allow for accurate adjustment. The top latch must be fully projected for correct installation. Having the latch projected prevents adjustment problems that may require removal of the door after placement back into the frame. Place the top latch approximately 1/8 inch down from the top of the door. By doing this, we are replicating the final installed location in the top of the door. Lay the top rod and latch assembly over the rod setup gauge with the top latch fully thrown and properly located approximately 1/8 inch from the top. Adjust the top latch and rod as needed for proper alignment. Align the yoke pin hole in the top arm and bracket assembly with the alignment hole in the rod setup gauge. At this time, the top rod should be set, and we're ready to move to the bottom. Thread the bottom deadbolt into the bottom rod assembly. Align the yoke pin hole in the bottom arm and bracket assembly with the alignment hole in the rod setup gauge. To adjust the bottom bolt, make sure the free-floating mechanism is fully extended. Add 3/8 inch to the door gap, the dimension between the door and floor, and adjust the bolt to extend below the door by the total sum of these 2 dimensions. Step 4, Detail 3, shows a detailed drawing of how the free-floating mechanism should be extended. The purpose of this free-floating mechanism is twofold. 1, it is a security feature, and 2, it allows the device to still function properly if your bottom strike has debris in it. After all adjustments have been made and the holes in the arm and bracket assembly line up with the rod setup gauge, then all major adjustments have been completed. The next step is installing the top and bottom rod assemblies into the door. After inserting each assembly, attach it to the door using the fasteners provided. The top latch and bottom bolt guide has slotted holes that allow for side-to-side adjustment. If your strike or cup are off a little bit, the slotted holes will allow for some adjustment. The next step is to install the yoke pins. The yoke pin is a 2-piece part. The first part is a set screw that has a nylon patch that acts as a locking compound. One end of the set screw has a hex socket head, and the other end does not. Always insert the hex head side of the set screw into the yoke pin. Thread the set screw into the yoke pin about halfway, which is indicated in the installation instructions in Step 5, Detail 1. The purpose of the hex head going inside the yoke pin is so the device can be serviced if needed after installation. Once you have threaded the set screw into the yoke pin, now thread a 2-inch temporary screw into the opposite side of the yoke pin. The 2-inch temporary screws are for assisting in the installation only. Install both yoke pins into the arm and bracket assemblies. Once both yoke pins have been installed, leave the 2-inch temporary screws installed. These temporary screws also act as a guide when installing the exit device. If the device has outside trim, installing it is the next step. Next, we need to install the trim. On the opposite side of the door, place the outside trim through the trim prep. Attach trim with the 1/4 by 3/4 inch machine screws with finish washers in the 2 holes farthest from the edge of the door. After the trim is attached, set the device in place and bring the 2-inch temporary screws through the 2 holes in the slider. Be sure to insert the tailpiece into the cam, which is located on the back side of the exit device head. Once the tailpiece is engaged in the exit device, take the 2-inch temporary screws and lift the yoke pins through the slider. Use the E-clips provided to attach the yoke pins to the device. Remove the temporary screws and tighten the yoke pins with a flat blade screwdriver, since they may have become loose in the process. Fasten the head of the device to the outside trim using two 1/4 20 by 1 inch machine screws. Center the end of the device on the horizontal reference line on the door, using the end clamp as a template to locate the mounting holes according to instructions. Remove the end bracket. Drill the required holes. Next, tap the holes. Install the end bracket using 1/4 20 by 1 inch machine screws or sex nuts and bolts. At this point, the installation is complete on a flat plane. Before placing the door upright into the opening, make sure the rods are moving freely. If not, find the cause and correct accordingly. Once rods are fine-tuned, the door can be replaced in the opening. Install the top strike and locking plate using two of the 1024 by 3/4 inch machine screws. Set the strike roller between the tripping lever and bolt. Do not preload the bolt. Shim as needed. A third screw must be installed after the device is adjusted and you've verified that it works properly. Install the bottom strike. We recommend using hydraulic cement to keep the strike in place. The bottom bolt will retract to 1/8 inch above the floor strike. The floor covering in the door path must be laid accordingly. Final adjustments. Confirm that all functions and adjustments are accurate and that the rods are moving freely inside the door. The top latch extends automatically and should deadlock when the door closes and the strike hits the tripping lever. This can be checked by depressing the tripping lever and extending the latch bolt. If the latch bolt cannot be pushed down, then the deadlocking is taking effect. If deadlocking doesn't occur, the top rod is too long and should be shortened by the top rod adjusting screw. The top rod adjusting screw is held in place by a 3/32 hex head set screw that must be loosened prior to adjusting the top rod. Turn the adjusting screw clockwise to avoid damage and provide positive locking. Be sure the hex head set screw engages the flat portion of the adjusting screw when retightening. Remember, retighten the set screw and engage the flat portion of the adjusting screw. When the latch bolt is retracted by the push pad, the bolt should retract flat. If it doesn't, the top is too short. Lengthen the top rod by turning the top rod adjusting screw counterclockwise. Remember, retighten the set screw and engage the flat portion of the adjusting screw. The bottom bolt should travel 1/2 inch and engage 3/8 inch into the strike in the down position. If the bottom rod is too long and is dragging on the floor, shorten the bottom rod by turning the bottom rod adjusting screw counterclockwise. Like the top rod, the bottom rod adjusting screw is held in place by a 3/32 inch hex head set screw that must be loosened prior to adjusting the bottom rod. To avoid damage and provide positive locking, be sure the hex head set screw engages the flat portion of the adjusting screws when retightening. After the exit device is functioning correctly, verify the outside trim retracts both the top and bottom bolts. If not, adjust the top and bottom rods as required. When the final adjustments are completed, the third screw of the top strike can now be installed. When troubleshooting a previous installation, the adjustments described earlier may be used. All adjustments should always begin with the top rod. The bottom rod is affected each time the top rod is adjusted. Therefore, it is imperative that the top rod be adjusted correctly prior to any adjustments to the bottom. Some telltale signs that the device needs adjustment are: top latch not deadlocking. The top latch is not deadlocking if the latch is not fully thrown and can be depressed by just pushing down on the latch. This means that your top rod is too long. Top latch marking the frame when the door closes. If a mark is appearing on the frame face, the top latch is not fully retracting. This means that your top rod may be too short, preventing the top latch from fully retracting. The device cannot be dogged or is difficult to dog. If the device is difficult to dog down or even unable to dog down, the top rod may be too long. This will prevent the push pad from being depressed completely. Bottom rod drags the floor. Always verify the top latch is working properly first. If not, adjust as needed. When the top latch is operating correctly and the bottom bolt still drags the floor, the bottom rod is too long. If the bottom bolt is not engaging, always verify that your top latch is working properly. If not, adjust as needed. If the top latch is operating correctly, the bottom rod may be too short. The electric latch retraction does not operate. If the electric latch retraction is not functioning correctly, the top rod may be too long. Electric dogging does not operate. If the electric dogging is not functioning correctly, the top rod may be too long. For all of the conditions mentioned above, remember on the Corbin Russwin ED5800 series vertical rod devices, the top latch must be operating correctly prior to any adjustments being made to the bottom. If the device still cannot be adjusted properly and the adjusting screws bottom out, it is an indication that the proper rod adjustments were not made during the initial installation. The door would need to be removed to allow for corrections to the internal components of the device. Thank you for your continued support of Corbin Russwin Architectural Hardware and its extensive product line of locks, cylinders, exit devices, door closers, and other door hardware. For product literature, assistance with hardware selection, or technical assistance, please visit our website at www.corbinrusswin.com or call 1-888-607-5703.